a special heirloom in your family, and I want you to tell me what it is, which ancestor it belonged to, and just any story about it that you want to share.
Absolutely. So my grandfather was born in San Francisco in 1922. His father was career military, and they were stationed at the Presidio at the time. And my great-grandmother was raised in Texas. She loved music, and so shortly after, or right around the time that my grandfather was born, they bought a baby grand piano. And that baby grand piano, she had my grandfather and 2 daughters. And when my great-grandmother passed in 1975, they were living in Los Angeles, and her oldest daughter came down and picked the piano up when she passed and took it to Oregon. And it was in her home. And when I was in high school, we moved to Oregon for a few years. And so this piano that I had these vague memories of being a little girl in my great-grandma's house was now in my grandpa's sister's house in Oregon. And I loved that, and I got to play it because by then I was, old enough. When my Aunt Dorothy died, my dad's sister inherited that piano, so it went back down to Los Angeles, and it was in her apartment in North Hollywood my whole life. My Aunt Rhonda just died in 2020, and when they were cleaning out her apartment, my dad and his other sister asked me if I would come get it. And so I now have that 100-year-old piano that has been through these generations of women in my family tree. Now here's the sad part. My current home is not big enough for it, so it's sitting in storage, but I will be building a home hopefully in the next few years that has a space for it.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So you talk a lot about stories and their significance in our ancestor stories. What is the importance of us recording our stories?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So for those of you who don't know, I have a podcast called Stories That Live in Us. And originally my idea was let's have people tell their ancestors' stories. But there's this really beautiful thing that's happened over the last year as I've interviewed guests and shared some of my own stories, which is I realize that there is absolutely power, not just in telling their stories, but in telling our own stories too. And those stories all look different, but the one that I always tell people to start with is if you have children, you should be sharing the story of how you and their other parent met. I don't care if they're not together anymore. I don't care if that was a brief relationship. I don't care if it ended horribly. I don't care if you're still together 30 years later. Your children should know the story of how their parents met. That's such a simple place to start. And I love telling people, right? I can tell the story of how my parents met in 4 words. 4-day blind date. And what I just watched happen on all your faces is exactly what happens usually when I say that. Well, I need to know the rest of the story. And so I have found not only that telling our stories is important, but if we can distill it down to a little hook that makes them ask for the story, they're more likely to listen.
I work with a lot of people who are starting their work, digging.
Yeah.
What is the pro of getting an Ancestry subscription as opposed just to using the free service?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I encourage everyone to start for free on Ancestry, right? Sign up for an account. You do not have to have a free trial even. You can just become a free registered guest and you can start building your tree. And the benefit of that is it gives you a place to start collecting all of that information. And you all have information in those beginning generations. You know yourself, your parents, hopefully you know your grandparents. Though there's this weird statistic, right? More than 50% of Americans can't name all 4 of their grandparents. And so I always tell people, step 2 of starting a family tree is talk to your family, because somebody may know something. And so you want to just start, use the free service to start collecting that information. When you want to start paying for the subscription is when you want to start accessing the historical records. So the 1950 census on Ancestry, free. 1940 census on Ancestry, free. You can start your family tree with just that. But as soon as you want to start looking into more records, that's what the subscription service pays for. And you can subscribe for a month at a time and turn it off, or you can subscribe for a year at a time and go all in at less than $1 a day. I think it's a steal, especially considering I used to do this in the old days when it cost way more than that.
Thank you so much. You're awesome.
Thank you.
I want to hear about one of your brick wall ancestors, what the brick wall is, and what you think the mystery key to discovering or breaking through might be.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I know exactly the answer. I have lots of brick walls, do not get me wrong, but I have one that has plagued me for ages. The first problem is his name is John O'Brien. You could not get more generic. The second problem is that he had a penchant for storytelling like any good Irishman, and so he never consistently in any record reports his age or his birthplace. So he could have been born in 1832 or 1837 or 1841 in either Ohio or Illinois or Iowa or Ireland. We don't know. And the problem is the only concrete evidence we have is after he marries my great-grandmother's mother. He was with her before he married her. We aren't sure. He fathered 2 children by her while she was still married to her second husband. There's a lot of messiness there. But so we have all this documentation from him, his life from that point forward. And from his tombstone, we know he served in the Civil War. And we know where he enlisted because of that. But when I go to that county in Iowa to find all the men named John O'Brien who are in that age range, there's 12 of them. And so I don't know which one he is, and I've slowly been working my way through eliminating them one at a time. But I'm still left, I think, with about 7. The key to breaking through it is going to be DNA. So we DNA tested my mom and her sisters and her first cousins on that side. There was nobody in the generation above them, but he is their great-grandfather. And so, yeah, super close. And we already have a cluster of about 47 matches who connect to a specific county in Ireland and all also have O'Brien brick walls. And so I suspect that the parents of the immigrant generation is like, these people are all going to be his siblings, and we're going to eventually tie it together.
Can you promise to do a podcast about the O'Brien brick wall?
I absolutely will.
Because my brick wall is an Irishman, and we don't know his. And yeah, it's very similar. So
Yeah.
pretty please.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
What are the greatest benefits of starting on your family history journey,
Yeah.
especially for the younger generations?
Right? Yeah, so hopefully you're all familiar with the Emory University study done back in the late 90s, early 2000s about resilience in children. And basically the foundation of that just says children who are raised in a home with a strong family narrative are more resilient and have higher self-esteem. And if those 2 characteristics can be bred into them because of that, then there are an outcropping of other benefits, better grades, better friendships, better outcomes in college and occupations. Like, there's so much that comes from that. The interesting thing is Brigham Young University then did a study a couple of years ago that built on that and said it's not just children, but it's also teenagers and young adults, that it is not too late to start sharing those stories or creating that family narrative. Now, I don't have a university level study behind me, but I can tell you after 2 decades at Ancestry, it's not just children and teenagers and young adults. That if you're coming into this at 40 or 50 or 70 years old, there are absolutely still those benefits available to you.
And how do you, if you are a part of the younger generation and you're just getting started, how do you prevent yourself from being overwhelmed and giving up?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think if you are, under the age of 30 and you still have a grandparent living, that is the place to start. That you should not worry about filling out pedigree charts and doing research and doing source citations and whatever. Like, don't go there. Just sit down and have a conversation with your grandmother, and do that as often as you can and record as much of it as you can. Because I think if you ask any genealogists in the world what their number 1 regret is, it's that they didn't talk to their family members while they still had them. So if you still have them, talk to them.
Thank you so much.
Last one.
That's a really good lead into my question. You walked on the stage as the barefoot genealogist, although you didn't tell everybody.
Yeah.
You talked about Ancestry, we've talked about the podcast, we've talked about all sorts of things you do. What's your number 1 tip for time management?
Oh, I drink a lot of Mountain Dew Zero, and I don't sleep very much. No, I have amazing people in my life. And here's one of the things that I worry about being a public figure is that you all see the podcast, and you see me doing the Ancestry stuff, and you see me as the barefoot genealogist, and I don't know how many of you know this, but I bought Family Chart Masters last year, and I'm running that business, and see, some people didn't know. And I run a membership program called Pajamas and Pedigrees, and literally I do so much. But what you don't see is that my brother and his wife and nephew number 3 are running Family Chart Masters, and they just call me in when they need me. And I have a producer for my podcast. I just show up and record, and then I do the publishing and the social media for it. She does everything else, the scheduling and the editing, and handles all of that, right? And so that, like, for my Barefoot Genealogist, or for the virtual events for Ancestry, like, I have an entire team that, like, at Ancestry that handles all the marketing of that. Like, I just get to show up and do what I do best, which is teach, which is what I love doing, and connecting with you all, and they all make me look good. But I am so grateful, because I do not do this alone, and I don't want any of you who are influencers or podcasters or in this space to think that Crista does it all by herself, because I don't. I am so blessed to have a good team, and if I could give you one piece of advice in the space that you're in, it's to surround yourself with good people. Okay? Thank you.